about the national politics, but this is the people that we really work with and we really interface with. So we just start locally. And so I just want to invite the neighbors to come and hear the people that are here. I lost Nina. There's Nina. Nina Pavlock is our precinct chairwoman. So if you didn't meet her earlier, that's who she is. And Vanessa Lester is the Hillsborough County Chair of the Democratic Party. And I'm going to turn over the MC duties to her, so that she can introduce the candidates. And we want to encourage you guys to ask questions. Thanks for coming. And get food back there.
Thank you.
All right, so what I want to say basically is good evening and thank you all for being here. It's events like this and small intimate spaces where change actually occurs, right? Because sometimes I know a lot of us go into spaces where we see the same faces all the time. So seeing new and fresh people that want to get involved is actually encouraging. So, and thank you very much for insisting. I won't say asking, but actually insisting, saying, I want to do something for my community. I want to invite my neighbors out. Can you get me some candidates out? And let the neighbors actually come and talk to them. So I'm going to start off with this and basically say, my name is Vanessa Lester, and I have the honor and pleasure of serving as the Hillsborough County Democratic Executive Committee Chair. Basically, that means I'm the Democratic Party Chair for the entire county of Hillsborough County. More importantly than who I am is I'm a believer of us. We are at a crossroads here in the state of Florida. For far too long, we've been playing defense. But the HDEC is chartering a new path. We aren't just a political organization, we are the foundation of the democracy of Hillsborough County. From the streets of Tampa to the neighborhoods of Lutz and Brandon, and even out here in Apollo Beach, we are the one who turn values into actually action. We all know that voting is a right, but in this climate, voting is our most powerful form of resistance and our most direct path to progress. Every time someone stays home, a voice is silenced on affordability, on education, and on justice. But registering voters isn't enough. We have to find ways to be in community 365 days a year, not just 100 days before the election. We, the HCDEC, is investing in knocking on doors, making phone calls in order to make sure that people understand the importance of their voices and which candidates will really represent their values and needs. When we vote, we don't choose a candidate, we choose the future for our families. And on that note, I want to introduce probably about 3 candidates that's in here tonight, if that's okay. And I'm going to start with Representative Rayner, which is already an elected representative, Michelle Rayner, out of 62. This is also her candidate Eileen Rodriguez, which is running countywide for county commissioner. And Neil Manamala, please, Dr. Neil, is also running for countywide. And normally what you do is they will come in and give you a stop speech and tell you all the reasons that they're running. But one of my values and one of the things that I believe in is I seek to understand before being understood. So tonight we want to, and this is like, what questions do I want to ask? Tonight we actually want to hear from the community here in Apollo Beach in this area on what your concerns are, what you want from an elected official, what you want to see different in your county. And by the way, I forgot to introduce one other person. I have Chris Rabbit and Susan. They're also precinct captains out in this area as well. But what I wanted to say is we want to hear from you. We don't just want to tell you things. We want to know what your concerns are. So if you please be kind enough to come up and share what it is that you want to see out in Apollo Beach, what it is that you want to see in Hillsborough County, what you like, what you don't like. Either of them are going to respond, and then at the end of the presentation tonight, they're going to tell you why they're running. So about you first and them second. So anybody? Can't be a room full of silence. Susan, I see your hands. Can't you come up?
I just don't like what's going on every single day. Come on, talk. I don't like what's going on. This president has to go. And everybody in his, whatever. This is terrible. Every day he does something rotten. And what he's done to healthcare, it's just deplorable. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but I just can't stand it. And I yell at the television all the time when he's on. I tell him to shut up, he's an idiot.
I know that is a national level issue, but if anybody wants to speak to that, please do.
I just wanted to thank Susan and Chris for being precinct captains here in this area. You know, I used to represent, and by the way, I'm Michelle Rayner. I'm running for state senate, but I'm currently a state representative in the Florida House. And I used to represent this area before redistricting, and a lot of people would discount Apollo Beach. They're like, oh, it's Republican. Oh, you don't need to go out there. Oh, you don't need to knock there. And I always knocked here. I always would come out and talk to folks. And what I realized about this area, there's a lot more of us than there are them. We just are a little bit more quieter and they're a little bit more vocal. So I want to thank the folks and Claudia for doing this event here, because while you are yelling at the TV, you are actually doing something as well. And I think that's so important, of just not just being upset, but taking your frustration and actually channeling it into something to actually make the difference in your community. And so while, you know, we can be elected and those things are great, it's actually the power lies with y'all. The power doesn't lie with us, it lies with y'all. So I just want to actually just take a moment, a personal privilege, to appreciate y'all for just doing the work that you're doing, especially in Apollo Beach. It's like, okay, a little difficult. So I appreciate y'all so much. So I just want to give you
Well, let me add, there's a couple of things. One is the county commissioner thing. So is there gonna be an initiative on the ballot that's changing our county commission structure? And can you guys speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. So, hello guys, my name is Dr. Neil Manamala. I'm a physician in the area, Valrico native, president of the Hillsborough County Medical Association. And I will tell you that I'll actually address both questions. And thank you both for that. First off, yes, they're trying to make it so that they expand the county commission from where it is right now, 7 county commissioners. And this is from back when the county charter was written back in the 80s, where the whole idea behind our representation right now is every citizen in this county can vote for the majority of the commission. It has 4 commissioners represented. That means you have one who represents this area, this district, single member district, which is Miller, Christine Miller. And you got 3 county-wide commissioners. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get rid of that, make it so we have 9 county commissioners, and each commissioner represents a single area, which the part that they're saying is like, hey, this is because we see so much growth in East County, in South County, so much growth out here, that, you know, one commissioner representing a single district, a single quadrant of the county is too much work for them to do. But what they failed to tell you is that they've been trying to push a map that would make the county commission be in perpetuity 7 Republicans to 2 Democrats.
Right.
And they've been trying to push that through since Michael Owen was on the county commission. He used to represent this area.
and he filed the bill.
He filed the bill. It died 2 sessions ago in committee.
It did.
Then he tried again this time on the technicality to make it so, oh, let's let the voters decide, right? And so it's going to be really, really important that we decide as Hillsborough County voters to push back and say no on that referendum item, because what that does is dilutes out our representation. It allows this party that's been in power my entire lifetime here in Florida, 30 plus years, to gerrymander our county commission, gerrymander a representation on a local level, and ultimately makes it so that democracy is no longer a thing at every level. And so on that front, I tell people, you know, yes, we're in a period of darkness and despair. Certainly up in Tallahassee, God bless him, and Representative Rainer for fighting the good fight.
Prayers.
I pray every day. And certainly up in DC. But I tell people, there's a lot smarter and wiser people than me that can open up the Strait of Hormuz. But what we can affect here on a local level impacts our day-to-day more than anything. The traffic, the issues of affordability in our housing and the groceries, right? You know, the issues that we're talking about here on a local level don't care who you voted for president in 2024. We're all impacted by the same traffic and flooding and lack of affordability here in Hillsborough County. And that's what allows us to build a coalition here on the local level. And Eileen and I have been all over this county, talking to Republicans, Democrats, Independents alike, building a coalition for change. So we ask you guys to join us in that, and we'll talk more about it as the night progresses.
Absolutely. I'll add to that, regarding 7 versus 9, as we've all said, it's not a good idea. We will end up losing representation. Again, you have 4 county commissioners that represent you right now. So if they go to the individual districts, they're just going to be focused on their district. So then there's nobody looking out for the county at the big picture. Who's looking out for the county? Who's looking at, let's look at smart growth for the entire county. How is the construction going on in Apollo Beach affecting our roads? And how is that affecting traffic on I-4?
Yeah.
It has to be comprehensive, holistic. If you break it up in little chunks and little pieces, they're just going to sit around and fight with each other, and they're not going to get things done. So definitely, I do not think that's good for the voters, and we need to make sure we're educating our friends as well, so when they go to vote, that they know, do not vote for that.
Because on the surface, it
It
sounds.
sounds good,
Good.
but it's creating more bureaucracy.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Yeah.
cost the government more because they're having more salaries, more staff, more elected officials. And I think keeping the at-large seats and having a balance between at-large and district is important. And they've done it in other municipalities and it doesn't work well.
It doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
So the bill came to the legislature. So for those who don't know, we have a Hillsborough County Legislative Delegation meeting. So when you have a bill like this, it's called a local bill, right? I don't want to get too nerdy, but it's called a local bill. So you have all of the members of the delegation, and in order for it to get to even the legislature, we have to be able to vote it out of the delegation. So the delegation meetings are public. I encourage all of y'all to go to them. They are public. They always do it at the most inopportune times, like 11 o'clock on a Wednesday when everyone's working. But if you're able to get there, get there. So a lot of people came and spoke against it. And what I, challenged Michael Owen, I said, this seems like a power grab. You believe that Hillsborough County is more open, and you believe if you do this, this is going to be able to pack or stack the county commission. So, of course, there's less Democrats on the Hillsborough County legislative delegation, so it got passed out and went to the House, and it went through the committee process and on the floor. And what was really telling is that we had a body of 120 members, only maybe 4 or 5 are from Hillsborough County, deciding on the fate what the voters of Hillsborough County get to vote on. And that was a shame because he stood up there and did not tell the truth about what was actually happening in the county. And it was myself and other members that were like, we actually live here, so let me go ahead and tell you why this is not going to work for our county. And they were like, oh, well, Miami-Dade does that. I'm like, well, we're not Miami-Dade. And so, once again, he knew he could get it passed in a Republican-led legislature, so you now have 120 people in the House and 40 people in the Senate, though majority of them that do not live in Hillsborough County, making a decision for you about what's gonna be on the ballot, knowing that there's not gonna be enough time to educate people about how this really is going to impact their life.
And I wanted to add, to answer Susan's, you mentioned the national concerns. I wanted to speak to that because very specifically, and I think we all believe this, politics, running for office, being in government should not be about partisanship, especially at the local level. It really is about serving our residents of Hillsborough County, people across the county. We all have the same needs. And so when you turn on the news in the morning, what's going to happen today, and you see all this chaos in Washington, right? And I know we feel it every day. That's toxic. That division, they're turning us against each other. We're not each other's enemies. We're all Americans, and we need to do our best to work together. At the local level, and going up to you as well at the state level, because she sees this, I think, with the big picture. We all have the same needs. We all have potholes. Potholes don't care what your political affiliation is, do they? No, you just need them fixed. We all need housing, safety, transportation. These are all issues that should not be partisan. And unfortunately, the way the political world works, that's happened. And so we need to have good people keep good people in office, bring good people in office that are gonna look out for you, and look out for our people, and people that are from our community, like you were saying. So I just wanted to add to that, because I feel that frustration with you, Susan.
Thank you. Before you do that, if it's okay, I don't wanna take anything away from what you're saying, but us as the party, it's our job to organize Democrats and to turn out our base. Our base are Democrats. And so I just wanted to let you know, one of the things that we're planning on doing as an organization is we're going to take that very issue along with any other amendments that are on the ballot. We're going to vote on it during our steering committee, which is our guiding body, and our main membership body, right? So we'll vote on it in what we call our steer code, or our business, all the presidents of our clubs and caucuses and committees, and they'll say yes or no to this amendment or that amendment, and then we'll take it to the main body, and they'll ratify that decision. Well, in doing that, I anticipate us on saying, no, we do not want 9 separate districts. But that's a small group of us in here talking. How do we get this out to everybody, right? And so what we'll do is, these are walk cards from now to the primary, but after the primary, going into the general election, we will put it on these cards and mail them to voters to say, please vote yes and or no on all of the amendments that are coming up. And that's just one of them that you've touched on. But I just wanted to share that with how the party also shares your voice and your vision as well. So I think it was Urban. And by the way, they said I didn't say it out loud, so I'm gonna say it again. Nina is also your precinct captain. So Nina.
Thank you, Nina.
I guess I can understand. One of the issues, my name is Urban Shell, I'm the president of Ife Heritage Center. I'm trying to bring performing arts to South County, at least more. But the challenge I have, and I see that's needed out, and I'm specifically talking about South County. I'm in South City Center, Performing Arts Center is based in Waimama. It's a challenge between rural and suburban. And the battle is, you have a lot of people who don't want development, but then everybody's bringing development, and then I see the sadness of my he don't want people to come from up north. I'm like, so we were just talking about, well, who's gonna move into all these houses? So you're taking land, then you don't want nobody to move into it, then it messes with the tax base.
Yeah.
And then I don't understand, I'm from Chicago, so I do not understand why there's no rail. You know, Florida's a tourist area. So why, I retired from the government, GSA. I have projects in up north in Pensacola, Tallahassee, and down in Fort Myers. I couldn't get there.
No, you
I had to drive. I couldn't get a flight. If I had a meeting on a Monday, I couldn't go Monday and come back on Monday.
Oh.
I had to go, if I was gonna fly, I had to fly Sunday. And then come back on Monday, because that's what travel day was.
Right.
So, but I don't understand that. I don't know what y'all can do about that. Then we have our battle of trying to get support to move more, I like in between rural and suburban, because we really need to unify the people down here, because we are all so separated. And then one thing that I just don't understand, why we are still so Republican with their philosophy. Where's the miss for Democrats, the gap to feel when, just like you said, we all in it for the same thing. What are they selling that people don't realize that most of those progressions came through a Democratic policy? You know, people, taxes, jobs, unions, others. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Irwin, you asked some loaded questions. Lord have mercy. I don't know whether to pray, cry, shout.
Well, take on the challenge.
Well, I am. So I would say about the rail, and this, bright line and things of that nature. I feel it. Every time I have to go to Orlando, I start screaming at Rick Scott because we had an opportunity to have that money. And this is and he chose to turn it down, which is again a consequence of Republicans being in power since 1999, right? For the last 4 years in the legislature, we've been in a super minority, the first time ever in 25 years. So, there's only so much that we can do as far in the legislature. I think one of the things that I fight for is to bring more, I guess, to stop Tallahassee from interfering with counties and stop Tallahassee from interfering with cities. Tallahassee doesn't like when Washington tells them what to do, so I'm not sure why we'd like to tell our counties and cities what to do, right? And so that's one of the things that that I was just having a conversation today about, really kind of, giving more power back to our counties and our cities, because, when these two get elected, guess what's gonna happen? It's not me, but the Republicans in Tallahassee are gonna tell them, that's so great that you guys got elected, but you can't do this because we know better for your county than the people that are actually living and serving the county, right? And so I think that, once again, and this kind of goes into your question, why is it so Republican? One, you have to elect people that are actually, actually match with your values. And then we also have to stop electing Democrats that are just Democrats because they want to have a position. You have to be able to speak truth to power. And being in Tallahassee, I am considered more of the progressive. There's like 6 of us. It's myself, Angie Nixon, Gantz, Anna Escamani, and Rita Harris, and LaVon Percy Davis, who went over to the Senate. We're considered the most progressive ones because I don't care about, you want to give me $1 million in the budget, it's $119 billion. Great, but what are we doing for the people, and how are we having electeds laying the record? And I think the thing is that when we have folks that'll fight, and when we have folks that are Democrats that don't kowtow to Republicans and just ask for crumbs, that's when I think that we have to give people something to vote for. We keep telling people we're not Donald Trump. They know we're not Donald Trump. So what are we doing? How are we getting people to vote for? You think of the last great gubernatorial candidate we had that was a Democrat, Andrew Gillum. You know why people voted for him? Because he gave them something to vote for. And so that's, to me, that's really what it is. And we gotta stop being transactional. You can't, and so like Vanessa was talking about, you can't just knock on doors when you need someone to vote for you. The Republicans took our playbook. They knock on doors year round.
What are they selling though?
They selling the same thing but wrapped up differently.
Yeah.
They selling the same thing but wrapped up different. Nina,
You're selling hate.
they're selling hate, and what they're doing,
We're not selling hate.
we're not, but what the thing is that they're selling hate, but it's hate like, oh, you are so concerned about your family, right? Dr. Neal, you're so concerned. Well, you know what? Let me tell you what we're gonna do. And if I start talking to you like this, you're gonna start listening to me. And then if I keep coming to your door and I'm not asking you for anything,
So that's psychological. So how do Democrats deal with the psychological aspect as opposed to the conversation? Because
I was actually going to answer I was going to speak to some of the mass transit and overdevelopment issues. It's embarrassing that we do not have good transit options in our region. We should have had this a long time ago, and many of you, I'm sure, have young people in your lives, grandchildren. They don't like to drive. They don't do that anymore. My son hates driving, but he has to. He works at Zoo Tampa, and if he were to take the bus, it would take about an hour and a half to get there. And if he drives, it takes him 15 minutes. So, we need to throw everything we can at the issue of not having enough transit options for our county. And it's not just one solution. It's rapid bus lanes, rail, trolley, ferries, anything we can think of. And we should have had this decades ago. And why don't we have it? Because of the lack of political will.
I was literally
It's
just
the
thinking
lack of
that,
political will.
yes.
Because the people want transit options. And if they tell you, if you hear politicians say they don't, that's not true. We can all tell you that. We have this conversation with people across the county every single day.
Yep.
I have a lady I spoke with recently. She's a teacher. And it's also connected to housing. She works in Tampa, but she can't afford to work buy a house in Tampa because it's too expensive. So she lives out in Ruskin, and then she has to get on the road and commute because there's no mass transit options. So she spends a few hours every day on the road in traffic, which ends up costing her more. I mean, that's just a hot mess. That's not acceptable. And we can do something about it. We have to have, vote for people, like you said, and like you mentioned, that have your values, right? Find people that you know they believe in the same values that you believe in. And that happens at the ballot box. That's crucial. And that's why, you know, we're here talking to you tonight. We all are on the same page that we want to flip these seats. We have to make a difference. And it's crucial. Us as candidates, but you as our community, we're all working together to make this happen. I don't want to, well, I'll talk about growth later. Go Neil, I'm going to take over. You go ahead.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
I will tell you, Irvin, yes, the Republicans in power, they thrive on hate, they win on hate, and the us versus them mentality. And here's what I would say. You know, we got to run on a little bit of hate too. What I mean by that though is, how many folks in here hate traffic? How many folks in here hate the threat of flooding that happens every single hurricane season? The lack of infrastructure, stormwater resilience, all that. How many of y'all hate the lack of affordability that we have here in Hillsborough County?
That's right.
And here's the thing, we gotta win small and big, right? Up and down the ballot, and we gotta deliver results.
That's right.
Because here's what I'm gonna tell you. You know, I grew up, my young adulthood, 2008, my first ever campaign, Obama, right? You know, a little bit of a Mr. Rogers mentality, you know, in terms of shaking every single hand, giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, pass the ACA, it's great. That was the first term. Second term comes around, you know, you give people enough benefit of the doubt, time and time again, even after they stab you in the back, and then before you know it, you got Merrick Garland up for nomination and he's not getting heard, right?
Correct.
How many millions upon millions felt the repercussions of that? So that was my political maturation. And so what I learned from that is you give everyone the benefit of the doubt, you turn the other cheek once. Once they prove you wrong, like that one party that's been in power in Tallahassee my entire lifetime in this state, right? You never elect them again. You never give them another shot. So we gotta play, you know, the same types of tricks, right? And the same types of political maneuvering that the Republicans have, right? Leave no chip unturned on the table. One of our number one priorities is going to be addressing the issue of traffic congestion, and some of that involves transit-oriented development, making sure that there is sustainable growth, especially down in South County. Some of that involves making sure there's no options left off the table. Our predecessors, Eileen's predecessor, Kimberly Overman, my predecessor, Mariella Smith, were champions of a plan to make a ferry that would have connected Gibsonton. Mosaic's Big Bend site actually donated a site for this ferry port that would have connected that to Midale Air Force Base. And although many of us here wouldn't have necessarily ridden that ferry, imagine what I-75 would look like when you take 2,000 cars off that road, right? And you know, I come from science, medicine. I look at the data, right? I look at the results. I look at, you know, what on an ROI can we get on this, return on investment, right? That's not what the current commissioners have in mind, right? Our commission right now is 5 Republicans to 2 Democrats. There are some Republicans that are actually moderate, you know, you can work with, you can find common ground with. The folks that we're working to replace are the absolute MAGA extremists who are on that commission. As soon as they saw that ferry plan come up on their docket in 2023, they just didn't like the name, the letter behind the name of the people who proposed it, and they voted to slash it, right? They didn't care about what the repercussions would be for the folks in Southeast County, right? So we gotta be able to look at all options on the table. And, you know, listen, people talk a lot about, you know, how you gotta be a good steward of taxpayer dollars. Public transit's too expensive. Well, you know what's too expensive? Spending billions and billions of dollars on highway expansion, which let Tallahassee, not you, but you know, the folks in Tallahassee, you know, keep shoving them down our throats here in Hillsborough County. And you talk about being a good steward of taxpayer dollars. How many of y'all were here when former Governor Rick Scott declined the $2.4 billion and would have connected Orlando to Tampa
That's
with
why
high-speed rail?
that's why I say yell at him all the time.
And here's the
The
thing.
business side, because you gotta take into consideration, big business is making money.
Right.
Gravel, asphalt, steel, that's what happened in Chicago. That's what
And here's the thing, we built a coalition, right? When we talk about what it looks like to bring business partners in, right? Not just the citizens who are gonna be riding, but like, let's say for instance, we talk about building a transit hub in Southeast County, right? Let's make it so there's tax incentives for businesses to build that density around that transit hub. Let's talk about what it looks like to establish parking reform in our county, such that we reduce or phase out some of our parking minimums, allowing the market to decide how many parking spots should be at each business. A lot of businesses are in support of that. But here's the thing, right? You know, if we're able to shift away from that car-centric culture that we have here in our county, in our region, and our state,
Yeah,
all of us benefit as a result.
1,000%.
Can I highlight a little something too, to go into our
Yeah,
question?
and then I think
You were talking about, Tallahassee telling locals what
Yes.
they can and cannot do. And I think one of the reasons that they are able to do that is because Democrats are in the super minority.
Correct.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Okay, so when I got into the Florida legislature, we were in a minority. It was, I think we had about almost 40 Democrats. And, it was still enough for us to be able to stop things, right? We were in a minority, but we could stop things because there are certain bills that require a certain amount of votes. Since that time, in the last 4 years, we've gotten into a super minority. And so people are like, well, I mean, why don't you guys do anything? Right now, you know how like they walked out in Texas and like they couldn't do, we can't do that. Here in the state of Florida, because we're the super minority, we've been a super minority for 4 years, we lost 10 seats and then 2 people defected to the Republicans, one being from Hillsborough County, Susan Valdez. And what happened is that right now, if the Republicans say we want to do, we don't think that you should, you know, give businesses parking incentives. And we say as Democrats, no, and we're gonna walk out, they're gonna be like, great, we can still conduct business without you. So what is important is that, one, we have the proper leadership in the House caucus to ensure that we're no longer in the super minority, because that has been incredibly detrimental to us, and making sure that we are allocating, resources to these candidates, but also making sure that also in the state Senate, what I'm running for, that we have more Democrats as well to be able to help the Democrats in the House. And so that, you know, being in the state House and having to really work with Republicans and try to hide things in bills that can actually help folks, that's crazy. Like, why would you have to do that? You're like trying to hide things in bills. Hopefully they don't see it in the bill. You gotta negotiate with these people, and you're negotiating with terrorists, right? Like, they're actually insane, and because they are actually wreaking havoc on the people here in the state of Florida. And then you're hoping that they don't catch it, and then you are then having to convince other people when it's like, I'm just doing what the people of my district ask. And then what's interesting is that you have people like these two that will be county commissioners that will come talk to us in this legislature and say, don't do this. Don't do this, this is the impact. And they're gonna be like, we're gonna do it anyway. So that's why it's important that's why it's important that we not only make sure that we're electing folks on the local level, but that you have folks in the state legislature that are going to be able to say, no, we're tired of impeding what's happening in our counties. We actually listen to the people in our counties and in our cities. They don't want this, so, you know, that's where we're at. And I can get into the property tax situation. I'm sure someone will pull me aside. Because I actually sat on the property tax committee. So I sat on the property tax committee, and once again, there were thousands, I think you came to one of the property tax, there were thousands of people that were like, this is not going to work. And they decided to do it anyway. And so, you know, that's why it's gonna be on us to be able to actually educate people on what's going to happen. Because right now, if you're on the house, you're like, great, I'm not paying property taxes. Cool. Let me go ahead and tell you what's gonna happen if we don't have property taxes. So, Nina, you have a question?
Yes.
Oh,
It's actually not a question, but I want to follow up something that Vanessa was saying. I'm going to suggest that everybody in this room go onto the Hillsborough County Democratic Party website and sign up to get the weekly digest that will come in your email every week so that you can get updated information on what is happening in the county of Hillsborough with things that are happening with our county party. And that is one way that you can keep up with what's happening for outreach yearly, not just during the elections. So I would really suggest that everybody sign up to get the weekly digest delivered to your email. And also, Vanessa was talking about the pawn cars that we're gonna, send out to educate. And the county party needs funds to be able to, you know, print those cards and to mail them out and to get that done. So if anybody can help the county party, I'm gonna ask for that too. So, and our candidates all need help.
Yes.
So that's not a question, but yes.
Thank you.
Let me just say, before I get into my question, I did Google Maps to get from here to Clearwater by bus, 13 hours.
Wow. Wow.
But my thing is floods, both floods, insurance, and
Yes.
mitigation. Now, I live in a relatively new community, it was built in 2005, minor damage with the hurricanes.
Yeah.
But the surrounding older communities down here flooded out. And so, you know, it's not only a matter of what the flood insurance now costs, I'm also lucky with that because I've had it for 21 years, so it's only going up 4 times from 300 to 1,200. But you go to people who haven't had it and,
Yeah.
So what can you guys do both at the state and the local level to help the people not get flooded in the first place?
Yes. I mean,
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean, you know, it's complicated, we are in Florida, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, here's the thing, after Hurricanes Milton and Helene hit, you know, our county commission spent a lot of money hiring these consultants to do these studies as to what can be improved, or what was a problem in our county and what can possibly be improved. They found that greater than 50% of our stormwater infrastructure was out of date. Greater than 50%, I believe, of some of the stormwater pumps in our county were outdated, some from the 70s and the 80s, right? But what our county commission had decided in their very much ideologically driven wisdom was that this was a once in a generation series of storms. And we had to put our hands up and say, too much is too much, we cannot do what needs to be done. And what we really absolutely need to do is update our stormwater infrastructure throughout the county. We gotta be surgical, certainly, about where we invest, right? There are some parts that are even more outdated than others, like, you know, our friends in Progress Village, right around the corner, right? You know, are not seeing the investments that are needed. We're starting to see some of those projects get started, but like, it was too little too late, right? Here, we were absolutely behind. But another element of it, right? When we talk about stormwater mitigation, when we talk about flooding mitigation, is pushing back against overdevelopment.
Yeah.
They are trying to do everything they can in county center, unfortunately, to let these big developers come
That's
in,
right.
right? And be able to build and build and build. And what happens with building is you get rid of green space. And I learned about the water cycle, I think back in 3rd grade. But something that happens when you have green space eliminated, when you replace it with concrete and asphalt, is runoff happens, water's not able to percolate down and come down and kind of replenish, and ultimately, that's how one method in which flooding actually does happen. And, you know, yes, it's easy to say, we're here in Hillsborough County or right on the coast, and, you know, you're gonna see flooding this or that, but no, I mean, some of this is, in many ways, human-induced. And so, what we really need to ensure happens is that developers pay their fair share in impact fees, right? Which is partially responsible for the infrastructure that's gonna, for instance, you build a certain spot, you eliminate some green space, you have to have a compensatory excavation, like a retention pond, for instance, to ensure that that's offset, but also having the courage to say no in the first place. We have a comprehensive plan, we have to follow it. The person who comes with the biggest check shouldn't be allowed to negate that plan, right? And so that hopefully answers your question about stormwater resilience. It's a multi-level issue. We're going to lobby certainly for state funds to ensure that some of that stormwater infrastructure is up to date and we are with the times when it comes to that. But we also have to be able to say at the county level that one, we're not going to take those big developer dollars, right? And two, we say no when they try to come in and say, you know, we want to negate that plan and build wherever we want to build.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you guys know about this.
Same time from Apollo Beach, you said they are building so much, that is also part of the trouble.
Yes.
There should be somebody, because there is no, you go visit anybody, there is no parking area that they're building,
Yes, ma'am.
building. And we have so much green farm, lost, everything is gone. I mean, air is, anything happens, any construction, it is polluted. Our air, we are on the water, but still, somebody has to stop this construction over here. More houses, no more
Yeah.
houses in a
What I'll say to that, thank you for that feedback, and then you'll take it.
Yeah.
So I have a unique perspective. My dad was a dairy farmer, so I grew up on a dairy farm in Plant City. So I really have a true appreciation for preserving our rural lands and our communities and our neighborhoods and protecting from overdevelopment and sprawl. I see it from a different perspective. I do live now in Tampa. I live in Forest Hills, which is kind of a central area. And our neighborhood, massive flooding. It's not a flood zone. And I know a lot of you experienced challenges with flooding. A few people were spared, but the majority of us did experience these issues. And a lot of the issues in our area were actually from lack of good infrastructure. When was the last time the pumps were checked? Nobody knew. What was the system between the county and the cities and the different municipalities? How did they work together? This is a massive storm coming. How did they check the water levels? There were so many variables. And we do live in Florida. This is a hurricane. We get hurricanes, but we can manage this better. We can do better, and we have to do better. We can't. We cannot let overdevelopment, construction, displacement of our water, harming our natural resources. Those things all work together. They're not in silos. They're all interconnected. So the county commission, we can push back. We can say no. We're not going to do that zoning for 800 houses out in this agricultural field because that's going to end up causing a lot of damage to the environment. Maybe let's steer our density to other areas in the county where density is there and there's infrastructure in place to handle that. And let's not build 800 houses out in the middle of nowhere where there are no roads, no water, no infrastructure. That doesn't make any sense. So these are things I think at the local level that the county commission can do and start making a difference. And it's going to take some time. It took some time to get into this mess that we're in, but we need to have people on the county commission that have your values and they want to protect our lands and they want to protect us from overdevelopment. And that's why these races are so critical this year.
No, for sure. So I represent St. Pete and Tampa in the state legislature. So both sides of my district got it. I actually was displaced from my home for about a week and a half. My street was flooded where I lived. I was in water up to here and literally like running on both sides of the county. And what we saw was a couple of things on the state level. One, where the state government preempted local governments from being able to, even if they had wanted to do upgrades to their stormwater system, we were not funding them appropriately. One of the areas in my district, Palmetto Beach, they had a seawall that was woefully eroded. And the year that we got the hurricane, we had asked for, I think, matching funds of like $2 million. The budget chair at that time, who is from Plant City, who's from Hillsborough County, who knows what's going on, said, well, Rainer, we know what's going on. We're going to satisfy that in the next budget year. And then a hurricane comes and smacks that area. And so from a state level, there's a couple of things. We have to stop preempting our local governments from being able to do what they need to do. We need to stop preempting our local governments from zoning, because even Tallahassee's telling them how to zone, where they can't zone. And they're doing that because, their donors are, developers and they're correct. And so, their donors will go to whomever and say, hey, well, I have this project on this part in South County and Hillsborough County, and they're telling me I can't do it. So then all of a sudden, tucked in the budget bill, on the back of the bill, you see something about they can't zone wherever. So you have to have a transparent process. But I also think that we on the state level is something that I've worked on with regard to resiliency with Representative Lindsay Cross over in St. Petersburg, who's an environmentalist champion, is that looking at ways that we can actually even stop things like the drilling off the coast and all of these things that still affect our climate, that still affect, all of these things are interconnected. And so I think that those are the things that, I have worked on. We've been able to get past incrementally, but I think that we have to have it to the point that Eileen said earlier, we have to have folks with political will. You know, it's not the lack of ability, it's the lack of political will of saying, you know, this is what, you know, we need to do. And so, you know, it's been hard in the House, in the legislature, to get those things passed. We've done it, you know, small bites at a time, but we need to have more folks to be in there so we can actually do some sweeping changes to actually protect. I mean, I grew up in Clearwater, right? I grew up in Clearwater Beach. I've been born and raised in this area my whole life. Nobody can tell me about Tampa Bay. I know about it. My family was, you know, third generations here. I've been here my whole life. So to see what's happening here in Tampa and in Pinellas County is very heartbreaking, because I remember when there were orange groves there, right? I remember when, you know, you will drive by places like, oh, that'll never get touched. And the places that will never get touched are, you know, being decimated or touched. And so, yeah, so those are the things that, you know, I definitely understand. And all of those things are harming our water supply, harming our all of those things, you know, is all interconnected.
But all of that equals one thing, development.
Yeah.
They're letting the developers get away with murder instead of.
Because of.
And not making anything, putting background construction in, not putting anything in the permit cycle that they have to meet. Making them give up money to do something later. No, you can't build until this is fixed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just,
Can I ask a question?
we had Dan and I belong to a group in Guatemala. We had a community group, and we were fighting for community benefits. And your candidate that you know, the Republican, he was one of the ones that fought us. We had an 1,800 house subdivision in Guatemala, but then he destroyed it. He said, "No, we got rid of community benefits." They were going to build daycare, amphitheater. I'm sorry, the developers over there in Guatemala in the subdivision. So when that happened, all of a sudden now we have a 2,400 subdivision coming in. So the traffic is even worse than what we thought it was going to be. And the thing I guess I see is that, to me, sometimes as Democrats, I know you don't have the power, but it doesn't seem like you tell the story, how it's affecting everyone, Republicans and everybody in the county, to where they may want to one day say, you know what, this is bad. And when we talked to your opponent, Mr. Warsaw, I'm sorry, to your guy, we actually went to his office and talked to him. He said he would vote no for them expanding from 1,800 to 2,400, and he guaranteed, based on the state law, they had a 99, developer suit, and he had a 99.9% winning percentage. They just don't win this case. So I understand the county and stuff and what all you guys come out, the state rules so much, but why don't we tell the people the effect that the state has on, I mean, we as Democrats, I mean, I know because I'm involved, but how many people really know that this is, we voted on these two people for the county, and we think they can do anything that they need to do for the county, but they can't.
Right. One man or woman alone cannot solve this issue, and it's not a question of telling the story of lived experience. You know, I'm a physician in East and South County. You know, I go to St. Joe South, I go to Advent Health Riverview, I go all the way down to South Shore Hospital, and I can literally attest to patients who cannot see me anymore in the office because there's no longer bus service in Guatemala, or because this is, you know, the air and water quality is impacted by urban development, right? And you know, traffic in and of itself, you know, all you have to be stuck in an hour of gridlock traffic to know obviously the repercussions of bad policy making, right? It's critical, however, that we're proactive instead of reactive. I appreciate y'all's, you know, ability to, you know, be that voice, right? And sometimes I know y'all feel like you're John the Baptist yelling in the wilderness, right? But you know what? I'm going to make a quick plug. You know, for a lot of our residents who live in South County and East County, my brother over there lives in Waterson, right around the corner here. If you live in a community development district, a CDD, there are seats that are on each of the boards that oversees these CDDs. And every single one of the CDDs has their own set of bylaws as to what the timeline is. It's unfortunately a Florida thing where it's very variable. But those seats are up for election this election cycle.
They're on the ballot.
They're on the ballot. 206 seats open for election this election cycle. As of a month ago, it was only 9 seats. We've been working on recruiting candidates. We have about 100 people who have signed up to be on the ballot. It's only a $25 fee to get on the ballot. We need 100 more to make sure that we have up and down the ballot representation that reflects the needs of we the people. And so, I know that's a very, we can talk for an hour about, the issue that you brought up in terms of overdevelopment though, but this is a question, like Eileen said before, not a question of resources as much as it is a question of political will.
And just to highlight a little bit, and I'm gonna come to this gentleman, thank you very much for trying to get those recruiting people to run for those CDDs. It was one of the things that we felt like was important here in Hillsborough County to do. So they've taken on it, and the urgency of doing it, right? This is qualifying week, so they need to pay those $25 and sign up. They
Friday.
get 25 petitions by Friday, right? Friday at noon. So if you know anybody that lives in a CDD, please ask them to run for those particular seats. And we'll do a better job the next cycle around. We'll continue to evolve and do things better. So, but this is.
On the CDD, I have one too, I know why don't they eliminate that and not the HOA?
Well, that's a whole other can of worms. That's a whole other can of worms.
Don, I'm not doing this with you right now. I know you in real life, but I'm not doing this with you right now. There's actually someone that is actively trying to do it in the legislature, but we will talk about that.
Y'all know what CDDs are, right? Y'all know what
No,
CDDs are?
no.
They're basically mini governments. They're mini governments that exist that the developer basically creates. And the whole argument that they add to the state legislature that they.
I wasn't there yet.
Yeah, she wasn't there, but they're like, hey, we need to be able to levy our own taxes. We need to be able to borrow, in many cases, on municipal rates. And, it's a whole complicated thing, but, and we need to be able to build infrastructure and make decisions on infrastructure. The problem is, when it's developers who decide what type of infrastructure they want to have, right? As opposed to we the people, right? When a firefighters come in and say, hey, we want to build a fire station at XYZ coordinates because this is where we extrapolate growth to happen and this is what's going to reduce response times. And by the way, response time for the fire station reduces your property insurance rates. Less than 13 minutes reduces your insurance rates by at least 20%, right? Just based on the evaluation. Peace of mind knowing your house is not going to burn down, but also the insurance company knows your house is not going to burn down, right? Well, what can the developer say? They'd say, no, firefighters, no, we want your fire station in the back corner here because it doesn't fit our aesthetic vision for our development. And so when these developers have these CDD boards, that are filled with their own interests, as opposed to us, we the people, what do you think is going to happen? And where are most of the CDDs? I think there's like 86 CDDs in this county. Where are most of them? Where the most growth is happening, in East and South County. It was incumbent on us, Republican, Democrat, Independent alike, hopefully mostly Democrats, to come out and ensure that the decisions that are made up and down the ballot reflect our values.
So you had a question.
My question to you is your thought process or your plans about two issues which I think are pretty important. One is on the transit, which is the old one of the fast train between Tampa, Miami, etc. So is there any movement in the state level to revive it because Mr. Cook Scott killed it? This is one. The second one is the latest one, which is, in my opinion, is a cheap shot of the property tax. What they're doing is basically trying to entice people, so that they think that the government is done very well for us, and they're voting for that. They're buying the vote. And what is your caucus doing, complaint?
So I'm going to answer the easiest question first. As far as transit, as far as like Mass Rail, nothing really right now is happening. We've had some bipartisan vote, kind of movement towards it, but it's not really kind of in the ether. I mean, you had Brightline came up and they've done presentations before the legislature. I am like, could we do this? Because I have to drive to Tallahassee, and the way I drive to Tallahassee, it's like once a week, it feels like. But there's just not anything. And what we know is that where Orlando should take us maybe 90 minutes, if that, it takes us, 3, hours to get to, or like, and you have to time it, like I gotta leave at this time, and if I don't leave at this time, and then and so, unfortunately, that's to the point I think Dr. Neal made, is that they keep just shoving down more highways, and that's just really, I don't think is the answer. But to property taxes, so I sat on the property tax committee. And what is interesting is that I sat between two Republicans, one happens to be from Hillsborough County, Mike Owen, and he kept whispering to me like, this is a bad idea. And I said, well, then say something, because like, you're a Republican, like say, because I'm yelling it's a bad idea, and he's like, this is really bad. I go, yeah, it's really awful, and it's not great. And so one of the reasons that they have done this, and I want to kind of just, if you allow me, just kind of really break this down. We have a property insurance crisis that the Republican-led legislature have allowed insurance companies just to do what they want to do. So in order to say we're trying to save you money, instead of fixing the insurance crisis, we're gonna go to property taxes that no one really people have been talking about, but not really. They kind of created a thing. They're masters at creating like a crisis that doesn't exist. So then you also have your governor that stole $10 million that once again, all of a sudden he sold $10 million. Property taxes is the thing. So then you have the schools of hope where taxpayer money is going to schools that aren't actually doing what they're supposed to do, property taxes. So really this is a shell to deflect from all of the actual things that they're not doing. So what they have suggested, this is not a bill that has passed, it is going to be on your ballot. It is going to be on your ballot to say that you no longer have to pay property taxes. However, what they are failing to tell folks is that it's going to impact schools. They say that it's not. It is going to impact schools. It is going to impact fire. It is going to impact police. It is going to impact parks and libraries. It's going to impact when your garbage gets picked up. It's going to impact your water. And they keep saying, no, it's not. And in fact, when I questioned the bill sponsor on the floor, and for those who do not know, I am a lawyer by trade, so I deal with prosecutors every day. So I questioned her on the floor, and she finally had to say, well, your cities and counties will figure it out. And I said, well, that's crazy, because if you're budgeting for your house, right, and can you go call Tico and say, I gotta figure it out. I know I can't, they're gonna tell me they want my money. And so this is going to be on your ballot, but the concerning part is that you have people that are not going to actually accurately educate the community about really the impact. They're going to say, I get to save a few dollars on my bill, but not understanding that that money is gonna have to be made up somewhere. And there has been no actual idea of how to make that money up, except the cities and counties are going to have to figure it out.
Can you go on TV and say that?
I have gone on TV and said it.
Keep doing it.
I have. I'm on Baby Who's Not a Lie. And they tell me I'm unserious, but I call it what it is. I say it's foolishness, because you're not being honest. We're being dishonest with people about what is really happening, and you're doing it to distract from all the things you have not done. And really, no one asked us about property taxes. But when I go tell you, hey, if I come tell you it's a Ponzi scheme, really, if I tell you you're gonna save money, you're gonna be like, great, let me save money, but then I'm not telling you all the other things that are going to be impacted and all the things that you're losing. It's the essence of a Ponzi scheme.
So what's your plan about educating the
So when I'm at the door, so I've been knocking on doors even before I got in this race, because I knew it was coming. So I've been talking to people about it. And so one of the things that even now that I'm in the middle of this election, I actually talk to people about it. I'm doing a town hall with commissioners and city council members in St. Petersburg. I'm trying to get some commissioners. Gwen Myers and Harry Cohen are only two people, because the rest of them think it's a great idea, which I don't understand, to do some town halls here in Hillsborough, and we are literally talking about it all the time that we're at the door. Because here's the thing, while I want people to vote for me, I also need them to understand that while this is not going to be on the primary ballot, this is going to be on their general ballot, and they need to be aware of what's going on. And so I have been very actively talking to folks at the door, because right now it's in your hands. It's out of my hands now. It's in the voters' hands. So I have to be proactive about letting folks know what's going on. And so when we say everything is on the ballot, it's not just us candidates, but everything is on the ballot this year. Hopefully that explained everything.
So-
Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you so
It's up to
much.
us
Thank
to
you so
talk
much.
to people, you know, and they.
Creative. So, we have to go all over the county, and there's no space I won't go. I wandered into a Republican club in Brandon, Greater Brandon Republican Club, and it was important in the campaign where, like, I was somewhat recognizable at that point, and I did get a few, like, hisses and whatnot, but I still listened, and I talked with folks, and to be honest with you, when the topic of the property tax thing came up, even in the most partisan of partisan Republican clubs, right? They're like, oh yeah, it sounds great, you know, it's red meat to the face, but then when even an inkling of explanation happens, it's explained, it's not a tax cut, it's a tax shift, right? It's shifting, you know, the balance book has gotta get balanced one way or the other, right?
Your money's coming from somewhere.
It's gotta come somewhere, and one of the possibilities is gonna be sales tax, right? And this is a question then no longer of what your bill is per month. It's gonna be a question of accountability, because right now, although not all of us do this, right? If you're upset about your property taxes and how things are being allocated, you can go over to county center, 30 minutes at this hour, or this time, 1 hour, right? Go over to downtown and you complain to your county commissioners. Are you gonna tell me that you're gonna drive 4.5 hours each way to Tallahassee to complain about your sales tax? Because your sales tax is determined by those legislators who are out of touch, except you, up in Tallahassee, and they're not accountable to us. And so it's ultimately a question of power. And, you know, listen, you don't have to just take it from Democrats or independents. You talk to the Republicans. George Cruz is a county commissioner in Mandy County, someone who manages to be a maverick in his own way, right? You know, butts the party line sometimes and says, hey, this is about making sure that our firefighters have funding, making sure our schools have funding, making sure that our basic necessities have funding. And that's what it ultimately comes down to. Local government has got to be a reflection of the people for there to be trust once more, and that's what this election's about. But I think this is also an opportunity for all of us to explain what your property taxes are actually going towards.
Yeah.
The basic necessities and
It's a lot
infrastructure.
of education, you know, just like we're talking about. A lot of people, oh, yeah, this sounds great, I'm gonna save all this money up front, not realizing the consequences that we've all been talking about to response times for fire, rescue. What about our parks? What about our libraries? All the things that sometimes we may take for granted, they're not gonna be there. Because where is that alternative revenue source that's gonna pay for that? And they're coming up with all these ideas, but there is not a solid plan right now. And so we need to make sure that we're educating as many people as possible. And like the party's doing too, y'all are going out, getting that information out there, and we're educating as many people as we can.
The reality is, the Republican caucus is trying to make us ignorant about everything. They just want to shut you out and then deal you like a herd of cattle.
If I can elaborate on one of the things you said, what the Republicans want to do. Somebody asked the question, who defines who Democrats are? And basically, they say the Republicans, because they're always telling people who we are, and we don't do enough of telling people who we are ourselves. Sometimes I don't think we know who we are, because we're a big tent party, and we have so many issues that we have to take and tackle. But we have to do a better job of defining ourselves and not just allowing Republicans to do it. I went to the Tiger Bay Club, and you did the liberal media, and I got so mad, it's hard to sit in that seat, but I had to behave because I was at Peggy Lane's table. So I had to sit,
You did good.
I did good. But it's just hearing them beat the drum and tell the lies, and they do it with conviction time and time again. We have to start to do the same thing. We have to tell who we are. And I just want to take a moment of opportunity to acknowledge the Honorable Cindy Stewart that joined us. She's here, and she's also running for county commissioner as well. We just want to acknowledge the fact that she decided to join us.
So on the topic of property tax, just so you all know, the county commission actually has announced that next Wednesday, 9 o'clock, next Wednesday morning, they actually will be presenting what the numbers look like if the property tax bill passes. So they will have a full workshop around, this is what's gonna happen, this is what's gonna cost you, and where they think that. I don't think they're gonna present where they think the cuts are gonna come from yet, but you could talk about public safety all day, because the majority of the money is probably gonna come from public safety. Whether that's your sheriff's office, who gets a boatload of money from this county every single year because you wanna be safe, right? Whether that's the fire rescue, and it's not about building a firehouse, it's the operating costs.
Correct.
It's about $6 million a year to operate a firehouse. every year. You can build it for less, but it's every year. So, just so you know.
Where's that meeting and when?
It's at the BOCC downtown, 601 East Kennedy.
It's also on YouTube too?
It's on YouTube there, it's the live stream, so you don't have to drive there, you can watch. You can sign up for public comment online, or you can go there and public comment, or they will actually take virtual public comment as well.
And I also want to highlight to that point, when we're thinking about public safety, it was the Democrats in the House that had amendments to carve out police, to carve out fire, to carve out veterans, to carve out childcare, because there's, county funded childcare in some areas, all these kinds of things. And it was.
At one point, you carved out the constitutional so they could get paid to do the job of running elections and collecting taxes.
Correct, in that. And we filed amendments to carve that out, to at least to make this terrible HJR a little bit better. And the Republicans voted all of that down. They voted down for making sure veterans had services. They voted down making sure, public safety was funded. They voted down even the elderly, when you're thinking about Meals on Wheels and those kind of programs, that was voted down. It was voted down with regard to, county funded childcare. All of those things were voted down. And that's also what property taxes also help fund, right? And so then you are carving that out, but then they would be like, we're the ones that care about family. Well, baby, what family? Who do you care about?
That's the beauty, even in the super minority,
Yes.
every voice has value, because Representative Rayner were able to have them go on the record and say,
Yeah.
we are voting, we are willing to get rid of funding for the kids and for the seniors and for the firefighters and police officers. So thank you for being a voice of resistance.
Standing up.
Did they tell Sun City Center? Did anybody tell Sun City Center?
So here's the thing.
Did anybody?
Listen, we do what we can. I will tell you, I am very active on social media. I'm very active. I knock doors. But I go knock doors. I do town halls in person. I don't do virtual. I come in person.
Right.
But also, I'm gonna challenge you if I can, my brother. Can I challenge you? There's a space where you and folks and what you're doing it out. Y'all have to organize. You have to mobilize. Because each of y'all in here can touch at least 5 other people that I may not be able to touch. So the information that you're receiving tonight, you gotta go tell those 5 other people. You gotta organize your neighborhood. You gotta mobilize. This is mobilizing. Thank you, Claudia. This is mobilizing. This is making sure you're bringing people here. You gotta find a political home. And I'm not even talking about a political party. I'm talking about, it could be the Sierra Club. It could be my organization, Just the Rectory. It could be the NAACP. It could be Meals on Wheels. You gotta find a political home. Whatever gets you going, you gotta sow into that, and then you gotta vote. So I tell people, you have to organize, mobilize, find a political home and vote. And when the people do that, that's where you see the change. We can only touch so many people. Listen, I try to. My team hates that I give out my personal cell phone number to folks. They get very angry at me, but I feel like you ought to have elected officials you can touch. And I will text you back and say, hey, listen, I'm in a meeting. Hey, listen, my ADHD is popping out, so I'm gonna give you my AIDS number, and you need to call her. But also, I think that it's really important on us. We have to do the work as well as the people of organizing. And so when I come here and people may be like, oh, Michelle, you're going to a meeting that has maybe 25 people. Yeah, but those 25 people know, each of them know 5 people. Each of them know 5 people, and they can say, listen, you know what, I heard about the property tax. Girl, let me tell you about it. You having a glass of wine on the porch. Girl, let me tell you about what's going on with, another thing. Girl, let me tell you about that candidate. I don't really like her blonde hair. Our blonde hair is cool. I don't know. Whatever. So that's what's important. So I would also just encourage you to keep doing more things like this. That is the organizing. That is the mobilizing. That is y'all finding a political home and ultimately voting on in the primary and in the general.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that, I mentioned it earlier, this is a group effort, right? So we have wonderful candidates, but we can't do it alone. We are all in this together. We have to flip these seats, and in order to do that, exactly what you were saying, we've got to mobilize, we have to get active. What you're doing here tonight is amazing. Thank you, Claudia and Jim, for putting this together. Because now y'all are going to go out and talk to your neighbors and your friends. But it is a group effort. It's not just candidates and it's not just the people. We have to do it together to make it happen.
Absolutely. Thank you all. And as we wrap up, is there one more question before we wrap up this evening? Yes,
This is
Senator.
about insurance.
Yes.
So I of course learned the hard way, but there's a $10,000 cap on mold and $10,000 cap on water. So if you lose a window or whatever and water gets in your house, I think it's only 2 years that they voted it in. It was
Yep.
only 2 years ago.
I was present, unfortunately. Yes. Fortunately.
Is there anything that can be done? Because obviously, the adjuster comes out and says to you, oh, you've got mold. You call the mold guy.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're spending $25,000 on mold. And then they say, oh yeah, we'll only give you 10.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what happened with this property tax reform that we did. I will recall it was a special session, I don't know, special session number 985. And we were, I think it was like December 2022-ish, 2021-ish, maybe 2022. And one of the things that they did is that they capped it because of these insurance companies coming to the governor. And at that time, he was launching his run for president, right? So he wanted to have the insurance lobby in his pocket. So what has happened, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a 60-minute special, probably maybe about a year and a half ago, that showed the widespread corruption in the property insurance industry, specifically in Florida. So what's happening is that now, we are actually now in the process of filing bills. Even Republicans are filing bills to try to claw back some of the stuff that they've done. However, even when those bills get passed out of both chambers, the man that likes to wear his white boots keeps vetoing the bills. So it is the money, and he wants to probably, from what I'm hearing, he wants to launch another failed presidential campaign with them, or whatever. And so that's really what it is. So right now is what I tell people, and this is kind of me putting my personal, my personal injury, my litigation hat on, immediately, get to hire a lawyer. What they've tried to do is limit access to the courts, but there are some really great property insurance attorneys if it's worth it.
Yeah, we did all that, but it was just the shock that.
Oh yeah, 100%. But the fact that you have to fight for that, yeah. So you shouldn't even have to fight and have to hire a lawyer to actually get what is due to you. But now they know that there's really no recourse, and sometimes really no recourse in the courts because of how they've written the law, and it's actually really, really bad. And so we have filed legislation. I filed legislation, and other folks, and like I said, even Republicans have filed it to try to claw it back, but the governor keeps vetoing it. So let's get a Democratic governor. Yeah, and the governor's vetoing, so we can have a fighting chance on something.
It's another reason to see that property tax is an issue, not property insurance.
Correct. That's why I say.
Property tax doesn't have the lobbying that property insurance does.
Correct.
So it's an easy.
Right, State Farm cuts you, a $10 million check to your, campaign committee versus the property appraiser. That's why, you have to be so mindful. And I say this for both sides, both parties, even Democrats and Republicans, you have to be mindful, you have to follow the money. That's why I know my campaign, we've been very mindful and very, intentional about not taking corporate money. I could have raised a lot more money than I've raised, but I also am very clear, I'm not bought and sold by the people. I tell people all the time, I'm a lawyer for real. I don't actually have to do this, but I'm choosing to do this because I believe in service. And so you have to follow the money on both sides. Look at where people are getting their money from. Look at how they vote. Look at what they do. Because you think that people aren't going to be influenced, they are.
Oh yeah.
They are. And so, yeah.
Well, thank you all for being here. I'm going to ask the people that have been on the panel today, the candidates for our future, to do maybe a 2-minute closeout, if you don't mind, to everyone.
I'm gonna let the county go first, and then I will. Yeah.
All right, I'll go first. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed getting to know you, and I talked with you one-on-one before. I mentioned it before, but I believe that running for office should not be about partisan politics, and it should be truly about serving the residents of Hillsborough County. I'm not a career politician. I am your neighbor, I'm your friend, I'm a mother, I'm active in our community. I've also had experience for over 20 years in community relations and service and leadership. One of my roles that I think is very relevant to what I'm doing now is I was an aide to a United States Senator, and I had an 8-county region, which was Citrus County down in Manatee County, based here in Hillsborough County. And part of that role was, at the federal level, working with all the counties, working with the county governments, working with the city governments, and making sure that we were connected and understanding how government works from top down. So you have the big picture, you have the federal government, and you have the state. The state helps funnel those dollars down, those federal dollars, down to the counties, and the counties, we get matching grants. There's a lot of different things that the counties can do as well. So that experience truly helped me understand how government works, and that when government chooses to do so, it truly can make a difference and help. But there has to be the political will, which is what we've touched on a few times. We have to have the right people in office. We have to have people that represent us and our values and our morals, and we know that they're going to be supporting us. So I am not beholden to special interests. I'm not a career politician. I am here to make a difference. I see too many people struggling, too many expenses are going up, young families can't afford to live where they live, and we need to change things, and we can change things. So my website is voteeileen.com. Please support me, please contribute to my campaign, to all of our colleagues here that are running for office. I believe these are the right people for these seats. These are good people, and we need the right people in office. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much for taking this time and having a very good interactive session. My name is Dr. Neil Manamala. I'm a medical doctor, the president of the Hillsborough County Medical Association, and a Valrico native. And I'm running for the Hillsborough County Commission, seat number 5, which is a county-wide seat to represent all residents of Hillsborough County. And I'm running to build a more affordable, a better connected, and a healthier county. As of this week, I've qualified to be on the November ballot. I'm the Democrat in the race. There's no primary or anything. I am building a coalition between now and election day, November 3rd. And I just reflect a lot on, why I became a doctor in the first place. I became a doctor because I am called to heal what is broken, and to find hope in the darkest places. I became a surgeon, not to talk about problems, but to solve them, and sometimes with a little bit of impatience, right? If somebody comes in to see me, I'm a urologist with prostate cancer, we put them to sleep and then they wake up and a few hours later we got it out, right? So a lot of people have asked me on the campaign trail, why do you go from one of the more trusted professions in the world in medicine to one of the least trusted professions in the world, being a politician? And the answer is quite simple. We have to change what our politics is about. It has to be focused on service, and it has to be focused on upholding the dignity of all our neighbors. And in so many ways, right, I see that, for instance, whenever I see a patient in the office or in the operating room, their health outcomes, their dignity is determined before they even walk in the door. Not by their diagnosis, not by their kidney stone or prostate cancer, but by whether or not they can pay for their rent or mortgage, by the water and air quality of their zip code, by whether or not they're stuck in an hour-long commute, having to decide between paying for their medications or their groceries, paying for childcare or being able to afford their hospital bill. And so many times in our country, we look at those harrowing decisions and we say that whenever somebody misses their appointment, it's a personal failure. In my view, in so many ways, it is a policy failure. And we have to do everything we can up and down the ballot to fix policy, to fix issues of traffic congestion, which is a centerpiece of what we're really going to be working on, pushing back against overdevelopment, ensuring that we are addressing issues of flooding and affordability in our county. Remember I asked y'all earlier if you hate traffic, flooding, and affordability issues. I didn't ask you if you hate the president or the governor. Those things can wait, right? Because here in this county, we have a lot more in common than not. This is a period of healing. This is a time where we can move forward. And I'll close on this. I am a new dad to a baby daughter who just turned 7 months old last week. And so I look at this county commission race not in terms of one budget cycle or one 4-year term on the commission. I look at it in terms of what this county is going to look like 36 years from now, when my daughter is my age. Is this gonna be a county where she can dream bigger than any of us were ever able to dream? Where she can raise a family of her own without fear? Where she can truly thrive? These decisions that we make in August, November, all the period in between and after, are gonna help us answer those questions. And I want her to be able to look back at our generations and with pride, to say that we didn't give in to the darkness and despair that seems to characterize our politics right now. That we chose to heal the darkness that exists, and it has to start here on a local level. So if you guys believe that brighter days are ahead for our county, then support us. Go to neilmanamala.com. We're running in a race that's bigger than 12 states here in this county, right? And we need all the support we can get. Share it with your 5 friends. Certainly donate as well. So I thank you guys so much, and God bless you.
Well, I am so excited to have been here. I started my career, and I'm still a civil rights attorney. That's the work that I've done. I grew up with parents who integrated the University of South Florida. My mother was part of the USF8, so I think I get my advocacy a little naturally. I kind of stumbled into this. I represent families who are on the worst day, whether it is folks who have had horrible accidents, people who are facing criminal charges, young black men who've been shot and killed by police. I represented the young man Marquise McLaughlin along with Benjamin Crump in Clearwater, who shot over a parking spot. And it was really because, his killer wasn't arrested, it was because of Stand Your Ground. A Stand Your Ground that was passed in the Florida legislature. And so when my House seat opened up, it was my friend and brother mentor, Ben Crump, that said, you keep complaining about Stand Your Ground, you keep doing all of these things, what are you gonna do about it? I was like, He's like, you should run. I said, no, thank you. I'm not gonna do that. He's like, you should. I'm like, and if anyone knows Ben Crump, it's more of a voluntold instead of a volunteer. And he wrote me a check for $1,000 and said, when you are brave enough to file for office, you fill in the date. And I filed, and then COVID happened, and then George Floyd happened. And it felt like all of the work that I had done at a moment. And we were able to win that race. And in the legislature, I prided myself on being one of the more progressive voices. I have been called, Ron DeSantis' worst nightmare. When my mother was alive, she said to me, I'm very proud of all the things you've done, but I think I'm the most proudest of that. And I've done it because I've never bent to special interests. And so I am in a primary. And there's another Democrat running, and you will have the opportunity, I'm assuming, to hear from them. And while we may look similar on paper, we are very different in practice. I'm very different in the sense of I'm going to speak truth to power whether you like it or not. You're going to look at my report. I don't take money to be quiet. Also, I don't have to do this. I do this because I believe in service. I do this because I believe that a better world is possible. I do this in collaboration with the community that I've represented for 6 years. I've represented about 40% of this district. If this election was held today, I'm the only person that can vote for themselves. So I not only live here, but I work here, and I can vote for myself. And I think it's important to have people that are rooted in the community, that are actually care about the community. And I don't get off on power. I get off on making sure that the people are served and the people are cared about. So you can go to michellefromflorida.com. You can find me on Instagram for Michelle from Florida, probably yelling at somebody, mainly Republican. And I ask that you join our movement. I would ask for your treasure, but if you don't have treasure, I would ask for your time. I personally knock 100 doors every other day myself. I don't ask anyone to do anything on our campaign that I wouldn't do. And so I would ask, if you don't like to walk, we got phones. And if you don't like to talk on the phone, I get it. We have text messages that you could just press something from your computer. But I ask for your time, your treasure, and your talent, because I truly believe that we don't need just regular Democrats. We need Democrats that are going to fight for people, and that's what I've done my whole life and my whole career, and that's what I plan on continuing to do in the state Senate. So thank y'all so much.
Again, I want to thank them for being here today. And in closing, I want to say, you've heard a lot of challenges, whereas in things are going wrong, but you also heard a lot of opportunities for us to right the ship in order for it to go in the direction that we want it to go. And I say that to say that voting and not voting has consequences, right? So don't get so mad at your cousin that said something about Trump 4 years ago, because their mind may have shifted and changed, right? So engage people and have conversations and don't not let them go to the polls. I always say, I care who you vote for, but I care more that you vote. So please encourage all of your family, your friends, and your neighbors to get out and vote, and then say, vote Democrat. But, right when they're getting ready to go in the voting booth. But I also have been told that I don't get from in front of an audience without making an ask, right? So I want to ask for your time. I want to ask for you to help organize your communities, your families, etc. And Cindy and I were talking on the phone either last night or early today. I'm not sure which one because time is a blur. But we both heard something at an event last night that says if you're giving your time, what you don't want to do is wake up on election day and say, I could have given more time than what I gave, right? So if you're giving your time, give more. If you're sharing your talents, we need talents from everything from social media to PER to bagging lit to all types of things. So whatever your talent is, if it's data or something of that nature, please volunteer, right? You can go on our website, Hillsborough County Democrats.org. There is a space to volunteer on that place, on that particular website, and we will reach out to you. So if you're volunteers, if you're knocking doors, knock more doors. I will go from Plant City to Wesley Chapel, over to Town and Country, and all the way down to Apollo Beach because I'm serious about what it is that I'm doing. So I will volunteer my time and my talent. And even though this is not a fundraiser, you've heard a lot about money tonight, I also value your treasure. So if you're donating to us, donate more, right? I know that we talk quite often, but unfortunately we live in a time when it requires funding in order to do the things that we want to do. I'm going to hold up two little things here. This is a donor program. You can take one of the QR codes with you, and if it fits you, and if you feel moved to do so, please participate in this. We also have some envelopes around here. We do have vision, but vision without resources is just a dream. To get this work, we need a strong funded DEC. When you invest in this organization, you aren't just donating. You're funding the organizers who knock on those doors. You're printing the voter guides that we'll mail to people around this county. You're building an infrastructure that can withstand the storms of both Tallahassee and Washington, D.C. We're moving away from top-down politics towards grassroots funded movements, and those movements belong to you. The work is hard, absolutely. The work is hard, but the stakes are higher. Let's invest in our community, let's protect the vote, and let's win Hillsborough. Thank you all for being here this evening. I greatly appreciate it.